There's something I keep thinking about when I can't sleep. I lie there, staring at the ceiling, and I let my eyes go soft, the way you do when you stop actually looking at something and start looking through it. And then I start wondering what it would actually feel like to just float. Not float in water, not float in a dream where the rules keep changing. Float in real space. Space that has no floor, no ceiling, no walls in any direction you could ever point. Space doesn't have edges. Space doesn't care whether you're there or not. Space is there, and it exists just because it is space. I want you to go there with me now. Let's allow our bodies to flow away and leave all of our thoughts and our worries and our cares down here on Earth. In space, we don't need thoughts. Just let your body settle a little more into whatever surface is holding you. Feel the weight of your arms. Feel the weight of your legs. Notice how the back of your head rests against the pillow and how you don't have to hold it up. You don't have to hold anything up right now. The surface has you. Gravity has you. You don't have to do anything at all. Good. Now, I used to do this thing as a kid where I'd lie in the back seat of the car on long drives at night, watching the streetlights pass overhead, one by one. You know that feeling, maybe. The lights come into the top corner of the window, slide slowly across the glass, and disappear. Come in, slide, disappear. Come in, slide, disappear. And somewhere between the 14th and 15th light, you just stopped counting. You weren't asleep exactly. You weren't awake exactly. You were somewhere in the middle. Somewhere soft and unhurried, where nothing really needed to happen and nothing was being asked of you. And the car just kept going through the dark on its own. That's the feeling. That exact feeling. That's where we're going. So imagine you're out there now. You let go and can feel yourself feel as if space is pulling up, up, up into the vast, quiet, calm darkness. We're not in a spaceship. There's no blinking lights or alarms, and no one on a radio telling you things. This is not in a movie version of space with dramatic music and things rushing past. Just you, floating in a suit that keeps you perfectly warm, in a part of space so far from anything that the nearest star is just a faint smudge of cold light that doesn't even have a name. Someone might have cataloged it once, a long time ago, wrote down a number, filed it somewhere on a server that no one has thought about in 30 years. The number means nothing to you, and you don't need it to. You're just here, floating. The first thing you notice is the silence. Not quiet like a library, where you can still hear the hum of the ventilation and someone 2 rows over turning a page. Not quiet like a field at night, where there's still wind moving through grass and insects doing whatever insects do in the dark. This is something different from quiet. This is the word quiet failing entirely to describe itself. The sound of nothing is different from the sound of silence. Silence is what happens when things stop making noise. Nothing is what existed before noise was ever invented, before there were ears to hear it, or air to carry it, or mouths to make it. You're floating in that. In the complete and absolute absence of sounds of sound, you become aware of the sounds inside your own body in a way you almost never are. The slow movement of your breath, the faint pulse of blood that you can feel if you hold very still, somewhere in the sides of your neck and behind your eyes. The body has its own quiet rhythms, and out here, with nothing competing, you can hear them. In and out, in and out. The pulse like a very distant drum played by someone who isn't in a hurry. Your arms about drifted out a little at your sides, the way arms naturally float when whenever your direction is equally down and the voiding down, and none of them are. You notice after a while that your left hand has curled slightly. Fingers loose, thumb resting softly against the side of your index finger. The way a hand looks when someone is deeply and completely asleep. You didn't do that on purpose. Your body just started making its default shapes. The shapes it goes to when no one is asking anything of it. Your right hand is open, palm facing nothing in particular, just open. The way a hand is when it has let go of everything it was holding. You breathe out. The breath fogs slightly inside your spacesuit for just a moment and then clears. You watch it clear, and then you breathe in again, slowly, all the way down, and then out again, all the way. And the fog comes and goes, and comes and goes. And it's the most interesting thing in about 500 miles in any direction. This small, warm breath of yours, this proof of a living thing in all this enormous dark. And it's the most interesting thing in about 500 miles in any direction. This small, warm breath of yours, this proof of a living thing in all this enormous dark. Notice how much farther you can see in space. You can see the fog 500 miles away from you. There is an asteroid. It's about 6,000 miles over there on your left side. The exact number keeps shifting slightly because it's moving. Everything out here moves. But 6,000 is close enough to sense an asteroid in space. It's not visible to you. You'd need instruments. But there's something about knowing it's there. This old lump of rock, older than anything you have ever touched, moving through the same darkness you're floating in, that makes the space feel slightly less empty, slightly less anonymous. The asteroid has been traveling in roughly this direction for 400 million years. Let that number just sit there for a moment. Don't try to picture it. Just let it be a number that means a very, very long time. Longer than anything with eyes has been on Earth. Longer than most of the mountains you've ever seen have existed. It started somewhere else, in a different part of the solar system. Got nudged by something. The way things out here occasionally nudge each other. Slow and gravitational and without any drama. It drifted, spent a long time going in a slightly different direction, then adjusted. A few million years ago, it passed through a region where the dust was slightly thicker, the ancient remnant of something that burned out before the earth had cooled. and it picked up a faint gray coating that has been on it ever since. If you could look at it up close, it would look like a potato that someone left in a drawer too long. Lumpy, dull, one side slightly flatter than the other for reasons that would take a geologist years to explain. Covered in a fine layer of material that isn't quite rock and isn't quite dust. Somewhere between the two. The way old things sometimes stop being clearly one thing and become something in between. It has two small craters from when smaller things struck it a very long time ago. Two small wounds, healed over now in the only way rock heals, which is by staying exactly as it was and waiting. Other than that, its surface is just whatever it was when everything settled. Unchanged, undisturbed, like a table the morning after nothing happened. Nothing has ever touched it that didn't come from space. It's going to keep going in this direction for another few 100 million years, probably. And then something somewhere will shift. Some gravitational courtesy extended from a passing mass, and it will adjust its path by some almost imperceptible degree and go in a slightly different direction. And that will be that, and no one will write it down. You breathe out again. The thing about breathing out here, in this imaginary, comfortable version of space, where you're not worried about anything, where the suit is warm, and the oxygen is steady, and you have nowhere to be, is that you start to notice your breathing in a way you almost never do in ordinary life. In ordinary life, breathing is just what happens underneath everything else. You don't notice it unless something goes wrong. Out here, it's different. Out here, each breath is the only event. In, the chest expands. The suit accommodates it, pressing back gently. The stars don't move. The darkness doesn't shift. The asteroid, 11,000 and some kilometers away, continues its 400 million year trajectory without acknowledging the breath at all. And then, out, the chest falls. The fog on the visor, the clearing, the small proof of warmth in your cold, in. Out. Your breathing is starting to slow down without you deciding that it should. This happens sometimes when you get very still. Your body just quietly takes over and starts making adjustments. Lowers the heart rate by a few beats. Eases the muscles in the back of your shoulders, the ones that have been tight for longer than you've noticed. Lengthens the pause between out and in. That moment of held suspension where there is neither breathing out nor breathing in, and the body floats between them. That pause is getting longer. You don't need to do anything about that. The nearest star to where you're floating is called, by the people who catalog these things, HD 40307. It's an orange dwarf. Not a dramatic name. Not a dramatic star. It isn't burning blue-white and furious the way young stars burn. It isn't swelling into a red giant, consuming its own planets. It's just a middling star burning at a middling temperature with a steady, unremarkable orange light that it has been producing for a very long time and will continue producing for longer still. It does its job. It doesn't ask for recognition. It's about 42 light years away from where you're floating. This means that the light leaving it right now will not reach you for 42 years. The light you can see from it, if you had instruments to see it, a faint orange smear among all the other faint smears, left that star 42 years ago. You're seeing its past. You're seeing what it looked like before some of the people you love were born. It has planets, at least 6 as far as anyone knows. One of them orbits at the right distance that liquid water could, in theory, exist on its surface. Not certainly. In theory. The word theory doing a lot of work there. Standing in for all the things no one has been able to go and check. Nobody has ever been there. No instrument made by human hands has ever passed through that system. No signal has ever been aimed at it with any expectation of reply. It sits there with its theoretical ocean and its orange light and its slow rotation. And it doesn't know or care that someone once pointed a telescope at it and wrote down its temperature and its mass and named it with a catalog number the way you might label a box in the garage that says miscellaneous. Miscellaneous. You learned that word in the 3rd grade. Probably. Maybe the 4th. You liked saying it because it sounded important. More important than the things it usually described. You had a box for important things and a box for miscellaneous things. And the miscellaneous box always had more in it, and you thought that was strange. Out here, almost everything is miscellaneous. Almost everything is in the box with no more specific label than exists, was here, continued. The dust drifting between you and HD 40307 is mostly hydrogen and a little helium, and trace amounts of other things that were left over from the beginning. Some of it ended up in stars and planets and moons, and eventually, through a sequence of events too long and strange to fully trace, in the bones of animals and the pages of books. Some of it just stayed out here, in the space between things, drifting, very small, very cold, not in any hurry. Some of that dust has been drifting since before the sun existed. Before the earth was a thought. Before the particular and improbable arrangement of atoms that would one day, through a process of almost unimaginable slowness and complexity, produce the thing lying in the bed and hearing these words. Before any of that was even a remote statistical possibility, some of this dust was already here, just floating. Floating and floating, bumping into other particles occasionally, little glancing collisions in the dark that meant nothing and changed nothing, and then continuing. It didn't know it was waiting. It wasn't waiting. It was just out here, being dust, which is the only thing it knew how to do. And now, here you are, floating in the same dark, made partly of things that have been here since before there with a here to be in. Think about that for a moment. note, just learning about a feeling rather than a thought. Let of the feeling of being very old and very small and very much at home in the dark. They're there of nebula in the general direction you're facing. It's far away, much farther than the asteroid, much farther than the orange dwarf star. It doesn't have a poetic name. Some nebulae get poetic names. The Pillars of Creation, the Horsehead Nebula, the Butterfly Nebula, the Cat's Eye. Those ones got named because someone looked through a lens and felt something and reached for a word. This one didn't get a name like that. This one is just a reference number, a catalog entry, a set of coordinates in a database that mostly only astronomers look at, and only rarely. It's a wide, slow cloud of gas that was left over from a star that finished its business a very long time ago. The star burned for several billion years, and then it ran out of the thing it was burning, and it stopped. Not with an explosion, not with any drama you would have recognized as drama, but just a slow cessation, a winding down. And then the outer layers drifted outward in all directions, very slowly. And that drifting is still happening, has been happening for millions of years. From where you're floating, it's just a faint color at the very edge of what instruments could detect. A kind of blue-green that you'd have trouble describing to someone. Not quite the color of shallow tropical water. Not quite the color of old glass. Not quite the color of the sky just after the sun has set and before the dark has fully arrived. Something between all of those. Something that doesn't have a name in any language, because there was never anything else this color that someone needed to name. If you were floating inside it, you probably wouldn't even know. The gas is so diffuse, so spread across such an incomprehensible distance, that you'd need instruments to confirm you were in it at all. It would just look like regular space, a little more of nothing, indistinguishable from the nothing immediately around it. That's most of space, actually. Indistinguishable nothing. Slightly different nothing. Almost imperceptibly different nothing. The variations so subtle that only very patient instruments can read them, and even then, only barely. You are floating in the almost imperceptibly different nothing, and it is, somehow, enough. Let your eyes move slowly across the dark. There are stars in every direction you can see. Not the handful you can count on a clear night from a city, or even the thousands you might see from a mountaintop far from any light. Out here, there is no atmosphere to blur them, no dust in the air to scatter their light, no horizon cutting off half the sky. In every direction, stars. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. More than you can begin to count. Each one a point so sharp and still, it seems almost unreal. Almost drawn rather than burning. They don't twinkle out here. Twinkling is what happens when light passes through moving air. All those little pockets of different temperature and density bending the light slightly differently from one moment to the next. Take away the air and the stars go still. They just sit there, fixed and cold and absolutely, perfectly silent. Each one a sun. Each one enormous beyond the ability of your body to actually understand enormous. Each one burning at temperatures that would unmake anything you have ever known. And yet from here, they are just points. Just small cold lights in the dark. So far away that their fire means nothing. Their heat means nothing. Their size means nothing. Distance does that. Distance takes the enormous and makes it a point of light. Some of the stars you're looking at are already gone. Not all of them. Most of the ones you can see are still burning. But some of them, the ones that burned brightest and hottest, the ones that look almost blue-white from here, some of those are gone. They burned too fast and too hot, the way very bright things sometimes do, and they collapsed or exploded or simply stopped. And the news of that ending is still traveling toward you across the light years and won't arrive for another 1,000 years or 10,000, and until it does, they still look like stars. You're seeing light from something that no longer exists. This happens more than you might think. The universe you see is not the universe as it is. It's the universe as it was at many different moments in the past, all overlapping, all arriving at your eyes at once. Every star a different chapter, every galaxy a different era, all of it happening at the same time in your vision and at completely different times in reality. It should be disorienting. But out here, with the silence doing what it does, and your body settling into its default shapes, it isn't disorienting at all. It's just the way things are. The light is old, the dark is older, and you're floating somewhere in the middle of it, warm in your suit, your left hand still curled in its sleeping position, your right hand still open. Your eyes are getting heavy. Not because anything has changed. Nothing has changed. The asteroid is still going its direction. The orange star is still burning at its unhurried temperature. The nebula is still expanding into the dark at a pace that makes glaciers look impatient. The stars are still sitting in their stillness, burning or already gone, sending their old light in every direction without preference or intent. Your eyes are getting heavy because this is what eyes do after a while. They've been doing it every single night for every single creature that's had them, for hundreds of millions of years. And your eyes are no different. And they're doing it now. You let them. There are places in space that are called voids. Not dramatic voids. Not the voids of science fiction with things waiting in them. Just regions where, for reasons that have to do with the way gravity pulled matter together in the early universe, there are fewer galaxies than elsewhere, fewer stars, more nothing than usual, even by the generous standards of space, which considers most of itself to be nothing. The largest known void is several 100 million light years across. Several 100 million light years of less than average. If you were placed at the center of it, the nearest galaxy would be a faint smear of light at the very limits of the best telescope you can imagine. Everything else would just be dark. Not the dark with stars that you're floating in now, but a darker dark. A dark where the stars are far enough away that they would be invisible to the naked eye. Just you and your suit and the dark. and the sound of your own breathing, and the faint warmth of your own body, and nothing else in any direction for hundreds of millions of light years. And even there, in that emptiest of empty places, there would still be dust, still the ancient hydrogen floating in its patient way, still the microwave background radiation, the afterglow of the beginning of everything, so diffuse and so cold by now that you'd need instruments to detect it. But there, still there, the quietest possible reminder that something happened once, a very long time ago, and that everything you can see and touch and think about is the result of it. You are the result of it. Your thoughts right now, going soft at the edges, the way thoughts go when sleep is close, are the result of something that happened 14 billion years ago. The atoms thinking your thoughts were forged in stars. The stars were made of the dust. The dust was left over from the beginning, and the beginning is still going, still expanding, still becoming, and you are part of it. You have always been part of it, and that is either the strangest thing you've ever thought or the most obvious thing, and right now you're not sure there's a difference. Look up, or what would be up if up existed, in the direction away from the asteroid, away from the orange star. In that direction, there is a cluster of galaxies, very far away. Each one 100 billion stars or more, spinning slowly, trailing their arms of light like something reaching in its sleep. From here, they're not individual stars. From here, they're just smears of faint light, smudges against the dark, the way a thumbprint looks on a window. Between those galaxies and where you're floating is the intergalactic medium. This is the technical name for the space between galaxies, which sounds clinical until you try to actually picture it. An almost perfect vacuum, colder than anything on Earth can get, emptier than anything on Earth can get, stretching for millions of light years in every direction. The light from those galaxies has been crossing it for longer than the Earth has existed, traveling at the fastest speed anything can travel. And it's still crossing it, still only part way through, and it will be crossing it for longer still. In that crossing, there is almost nothing. The occasional stray atom, knocked loose from its galaxy by some ancient gravitational event. Drifting alone through the intergalactic medium with nowhere to go and all of time to get there. These atoms are the loneliest things in the universe. They don't know that. Loneliness requires a memory of company, and these atoms have never known anything but the dark. They drift, they cool. They are the closest thing the universe has to absolute solitude. And even they are not entirely alone. Even they swim in the faint background warmth, the microwave glow, the whisper that started at the beginning and never quite stopped. Nothing is ever entirely alone. Not the stray atom, not the unnamed asteroid, not the orange star burning its unhurried burn. Not you, floating with your sleeping hand and your open hand and your slow breath fogging and clearing, fogging and clearing in the dark. The light from a distant quasar has been traveling toward where you're floating for approximately 2 billion years. 2 billion years. Before there was anything with eyes on Earth. Before there were plants. Before the first fish. Before the first anything that could have looked up at the sky and seen it coming. It left its source when the universe was young and strange, when galaxies were still figuring out their shapes, when the processes that would eventually make planets and oceans and creatures and thoughts were just barely getting started. It traveled through the early dark, through the long, slow expansion of everything, through the clustering of matter into the first structures, through all the vast machinery of time doing what it does. It will pass through where you're floating in about 11 minutes. You won't feel it. It will pass through you the way almost everything in space passes through almost everything else. Undetected, gentle, part of the background of everything. A photon 2 billion years old, carrying information about a source that has long since changed beyond recognition, passing through the warm and living thing that you are as if you weren't there at all, and then continuing on its way to wherever it's going, which is somewhere. Everything is going somewhere. Nothing ever truly stops. When it's gone, it will keep going, and either something will eventually absorb it, or it won't. And it'll keep going forever in the expanding universe, getting more and more spread out, carrying its 2 billion-year-old information into the endless future. And either way, it doesn't matter, and it's fine. There was a period, you might remember, around age 7 or 8, when you first became properly aware of how large space was, and it frightened you. Not a little frightened, really frightened. The kind that gets into your chest as a cold feeling and stays there past bedtime. You'd lie in the dark in your room and think about it. The expanding universe. The nothing that went on forever. The fact that the nothing had no edge, which meant there was nowhere for it to stop, which meant there was nowhere for it to end, which meant it just kept going and going, and there was no wall to put your hand against and feel safe. Someone had explained it badly, maybe. Or you'd seen something on television. Or maybe no one had explained it badly. Maybe you'd just figured it out yourself, and the figuring out was the frightening part. That fear went away eventually. Not because someone explained it better. Not because the universe got smaller or started making more sense. Just because you got used to it. The way people get used to things that don't change no matter how they feel about them. You got used to the fact that space is very large and doesn't have an edge, and everything in it has been here for a very long time, and will continue for a very long time. And that this is simply the situation, and the situation is fine. Somewhere between the age when it was frightening and the age you are now, the largeness stopped being a cold feeling and became something else. Something closer to the feeling you get lying on your back on summer grass, looking up at a clear night sky. Not frightened. Not exactly comforted. Something without a precise name. Something like, I am a small part of something very large, and the large thing doesn't need anything from me, and I don't need to understand it, and we can simply coexist. That's what out here feels like. The dark isn't hostile. It's not indifferent in the cold way. It's indifferent in the way that contains you without requiring you to perform or explain yourself or be anything other than what you are, which right now is a warm thing, breathing slowly in the quiet between stars. patience is the main quality of space, not coldness, not darkness, though it is those things. Patience. The willingness, if willingness is even the right word for something that has no will, to let things take as long as they take. A star ignites and burns for 10 billion years and goes out, and no one checks the time. A particle drifts from one side of a nebula to the other over 1 million years, and there is no sense of lateness, no sense of hurry, no alarm going off anywhere to indicate that things are behind schedule. There is no schedule. There has never been a schedule. The universe does not have anywhere to be by a certain time. It has never missed a meeting. It has never lain awake at night thinking about something it said that came out wrong, or something it has to do tomorrow, or some formless, anxious feeling that doesn't attach to anything specific but just hovers. It just continues. Star by star, galaxy by galaxy, atom by drifting atom, it just continues at the pace it continues. And nothing is late, and nothing is early, and nothing is behind, and nothing is ahead. Things take as long as they take. Out here, that feels like the truest thing. You used to have trouble falling asleep sometimes. Maybe you still do, sometimes. You'd lie there and the thoughts would start. Things you said that day, things you have to do tomorrow. Some formless feeling that didn't attach to anything specific, just hovered there in the dark of your room, heavier than it should have been for something that wasn't even a real thing. Out here, that feeling has no purchase. There's nothing for it to attach to. The thoughts start, and they look around, and they see the absolute, unhurried dark, and the stars going about their business, and the asteroid going about its 400 million year old business, and everything just quietly continuing. And the thoughts slow down. They don't have anywhere to be. The thing you have to do tomorrow can wait until tomorrow. It will still be there. The thing you said that you replay sometimes. The space around you has been here for 14 billion years, and it doesn't know about it, and it's fine. The space is fine. The dark is fine. The stars, burning or already dark, are fine. You are fine. Your body is very heavy now. Not heavy in a bad way, heavy in the good way. The way that means it has found the surface and settled into it and stopped working. Heavy the way a Sunday afternoon is heavy when there's rain on the windows and nowhere to be. Heavy the way the third hour of lying still is heavy. Your hands are in their sleeping positions. Your shoulders have found the place they go to. Your breath is doing the thing it does when you stop thinking about it. When you hand it back to the body and the body takes it and slows it down. Just a little. Just enough. The way it always has. The way it has known how to do since long before you were old enough to have opinions about anything. There's nothing you have to do for your body right now. It has taken over. It knows what comes next. It has done this before, thousands of times, every night, and it will do it now. You can let it. Somewhere far away, in a direction that doesn't have a name from where you're floating, a star finished the last stage of its burning about 4,000 years ago. It was a large star, not the largest kind, not the kind that ends in the kind of explosion that briefly outshines entire galaxies, but large enough. It burned hot and bright for a few 100 million years, which is a short life for a star, the way some creatures burn through everything very fast and then stop. And then the burning stopped, and the outer layers, freed from the inward pressure, began to drift, very slowly, in all directions at once. The light from that ending is just now arriving here. Not the dying star itself, which has long since become whatever it became. A cooling core, a neutron star, a white dwarf. The small, dense, quietly burning remnant of something that used to be enormous. But the light from the moment it ended, that light has been traveling for 4,000 years through the dark, past things that didn't exist when it left, past the point where your sun is still unremarkable in the middle distance, past all the unnamed asteroids and the unnamed dust. And now, right now, it's passing through where you're floating. You can't see it. It's spread too thin, but it's here. The ending of something enormous, arriving as a whisper, as a photon among photons, indistinguishable from the rest of the background, unremarkable, unnamed, continuing past you without slowing, the way most endings arrive, quietly, without announcement, at the pace they happen. You think about being in the back seat of the car at night again, because that thought keeps coming back, and you let it. You don't push it away. The thoughts that keep coming back are usually the ones worth letting stay for a moment. The car is moving through the dark. Somewhere outside, the road and the trees and the occasional building going past. Inside, warm, the smell of the car, which every car has, and which you can probably remember right now if you try. That particular smell, the vibration of the road coming up through the seat, and the lights coming in through the window. In, slide, disappear. In, slide, disappear. The seat was warm. The car was moving. Nothing was required of you. You didn't have to navigate or be awake or know where you were going. Someone else was handling all of that, and you could just lie there, watching the lights, not counting them anymore, just watching them come and go, come and go, in the safe and moving dark. There are, in the observable universe, approximately 2 trillion galaxies. 2 trillion is a number that doesn't mean anything, really. It's too large to picture. You can say it, 2 trillion. But when you try to actually imagine 2 trillion individual things, your brain very sensibly gives up almost immediately and just presents you with the word many, very many, an amount that doesn't need to be further specified, an amount that resolves into the feeling of vastness, which is enough. In each of those galaxies, There are between 10 billion and 1 trillion stars. And around most of those stars, as best as anyone can tell, there are planets. And right now, all of them are just quietly doing what they do, rotating on their axes, orbiting their stars at their particular distances, in their particular rhythms. The ones with moons, and many of them have moons, are pulling their moons along with them, the way a sleeping person pulls a blanket, without noticing, without effort, out of pure and unconscious gravity. Small courtesies. The moons don't mind. Somewhere in all of that, 2 trillion galaxies, hundreds of billions of stars each, planets beyond counting. Somewhere in all of that, there might be something else breathing, something else floating or lying or sitting in whatever passes for dark on whatever passes for a night. Something that has its own version of this, its own way of letting go of the day and drifting into whatever comes next. You don't know. Nobody knows. But the possibility is there, drifting in the dark with everything else. And you find that you don't find it frightening. You find it, if anything, the faintest and most distant kind of company. Your breath has gotten very slow now. Very slow and very even. You notice it the way you notice something from a distance, with a kind of mild and comfortable interest. The way you might notice the rain is still going when you half wake and then half sleep again. The breath is just doing what the breath does. Long in, long out. The space between them stretching just slightly longer each time. You don't have to watch it. You don't have to watch anything. The asteroid is still going. The orange star is still burning its ordinary burn. The nebula, with no poetic name, is still expanding its faint blue-green into the dark at its own pace. A pace that makes the word slow seem rushed. The quasar light passed through you 3 minutes ago and is now 11,000 kilometers further along, carrying its 2 billion-year-old news to wherever it's going. The dying star's light has already moved past you, already further along in its long and quiet arrival at nothing in particular. Everything is continuing. Everything out here has been continuing for longer than there were things to continue, and it will continue for longer still, and it doesn't need to be watched. It will do it on its own. The stars will burn or not burn. The dust will drift. The galaxies will go on their slow and enormous rotations. The moons will follow their planets. The ancient asteroids will follow their ancient paths. All of it will continue, quite you having to you're about it. You can let your eyes close. You can let your breath slow to whatever it wants to slow to. You can let your thoughts get thin and vague the way thoughts get. You know how they get, right at the edge of sleep. When they start to lose their edges and you're following each other in any sensible order, and a thought will begin a sentence, and the sentence won't finish because you're already one your else. Already in the space between waking and not waking, where the rules are different and nothing is required. That space is very large. Not as large as the space between stars, not as large as the dark between galaxies, but large enough to get lost in a comfortable way. Large enough that once you drift into it, you don't need to know where the edges are. Large enough that you can just go and keep going. And the going is the thing. The lights were coming in through the window and sliding across the glass and disappearing. In and slide and gone. In and slide and gone. The back seat was warm. The car was moving. Nothing was required of you, and nothing is required now. The dark is patient. The stars are patient. The ancient dust is patient. The stray atoms in the intergalactic void are patient. In their way, though patience implies waiting, and they don't know they're waiting for anything. Neither are you. You're not waiting for sleep. Sleep is just what happens next. The way everything that happens next just happens next, at the pace it happens, in the dark that holds it. The stars are very far away and very still, and they've been there long before tonight, and they'll be there long after. And they don't need you to look at them, and you don't need to look at them. And you can just let your eyes close all the way now. Let them close and stay closed. Let the images behind them go where they go. The asteroid is going its direction. The orange star is burning its burn. The dust is floating. You are here, in the quiet between stars. warm and heavy and breathing slowly, and already halfway gone, already on your way to wherever it is you go, already not quite here and not quite anywhere else yet, in the long and comfortable in-between. Go. Sleep well.